This is part 3 of the 1/144th scale U.S. fighter aircraft. My name is Jim Kelsey, and thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel. So today's video is going to talk about the fighter planes, or pursuit planes rather, from the XP-50 all the way through the Bell P-59. And what you see pictured on the display stand is the Grumman XP-50 skyrocket. This kit is a resin kit in 1/144 scale produced by Anigrand. Now, Anigrand produces some really high-quality planes, both bombers, cargo planes, fighter planes, but this particular one is not one that you can just buy separately. It comes as a set with the bombers. So there are 3 mystery planes that could range anywhere from an experimental small plane to a fighter plane, like what you see right here. And in order to get these fighters, you have to buy the bomber, which they're not cheap. They can range anywhere from $80 all the way up to $130, depending on what you get. So if you really have to have the plane, like what I did, then you end up getting one of those, or you trade with some friends, like what I did online. Anyway, a little bit of history on this plane. It gave its maiden flight on Wednesday, May 14th, 1941. XP-50 took to the air for its first time, but shortly after takeoff, the XP-50 was shaken by an explosion in one of the turbochargers. It affected the engines and burst into flames. The pilot successfully abandoned the stricken plane, but the XP-50 was destroyed as it plunged into the ocean. As a result of the crash, no performance figures for the plane were actually obtained. However, the proposed maximum speed was 424 miles per hour. It had a wingspan of 42 feet, was 32 feet long, and 12 foot high. During the construction of the XP-50, Grumman had begun studies for a more advanced twin-engine version, but due to the crash of the prototype and the new design, further development was terminated. Now pictured on the display stand is the very famous North American P-51, one of the planes that turned the tide for the United States. We finally had a plane equal to those that were being produced in Europe. And there's a lot of information on the P-51, so I won't go into a whole lot of details, but it could maintain a maximum speed of 487 miles per hour. Some even say it broke the 500 mile per hour mark. It was just an incredibly well-designed plane with a Packard-built Merlin engine capable of delivering 1,695 horsepower. So just an incredible plane for its time. This particular model is built by Minicraft. It's styrene plastic. It's a P-51D, which was the most popular version. And I happened to build that in 2008. Pictured here is a strange looking plane. This was, or is, the Bell XP-52. And you'll notice that it's got a pusher engine in the back. This never made it beyond the design stage. So, as the history goes, as World War II burst forth in Europe, the U.S. Army was seeking advanced fighter designs. This twin-boom pusher was to be powered by a 1,250 horsepower Continental engine. Double-bank, 12-cylinder liquid-cooled engine was the first pusher to receive the P designation. Cooling air for the radiator was to be ducted through an intake in the nose. It was supposed to provide a maximum speed of 425 miles an hour. It was armed with 50 caliber guns, 3 in the front of each boom. It had a wingspan of 35 feet, a length of 34 feet, and a height of 9 feet. Further development of the design led to a new proposal of an enlarged version designated the XP-59. So this was canceled in favor of the newer proposal on November 25th, 1941. And if I did not state this already, this is another one of the Anigrand models made of resin that you have to buy with one of the larger bomber or cargo plane kit sets. Here is another plane that never made it beyond the design stage into a prototype. This is the Curtiss XP-53. And again, Curtiss tried to attempt to provide a replacement for its P-40. 2 prototypes were ordered on October 1st, 1940. The planes were to be powered by Continental's experimental 14-1430-3 inverted V 12-cylinder liquid-cooled engine. It was supposed to provide a speed of 430 miles per hour. 6 weeks after the order, the Army notified Curtiss that it wished to acquire a fighter using a British Rolls-Royce Merlin. The order was modified to produce the second APEC XP-53 with changes called the XP-60. So assembly continued on the XP-53 when it was decided to use the airframe as a static test bed for the planned production of the P-60. So it really never got beyond that stage and developed to the P-60, which we'll show in the next video. Had a wingspan of 41.5 feet, was 35 feet long and 12 feet high. This particular model was built by myself, just scratch built out of various products of styrene and plastic and acrylic. And the decals were just custom made by myself. So pictured here we have the XP-54. This was produced by Vultee and was called the Swoose Goose. This was one of 3 planes that the U.S. Army Air Force ordered for unusual designs. They wanted to test some unusual designs, and so the XP-54, XP-55, and XP-56 all were classified under that designation. Neither one of them made it into production, but each one of them has their place in history, and some you can even find in some of the museums in the United States. This model is an Anigrand model resin kit, and let's see, I made that in 2010. Anyway, this happened to come about. 1941 was the year that the Army Air Force ordered these, and it was kind of unusual in the fact that it had a pusher engine. It first flew on January 1943, achieved a maximum speed of 381 miles an hour, had a wingspan of 53 feet 10 inches, a length of 54 feet 9 inches, and the wingspan of 456 square feet. Stood 13 feet tall. Pretty cool design all the way around. Just reading from the book here, a couple of unusual features that set it apart from its contemporaries. The first was the articulated nose section containing the armament package. No doubt, 2 37mm cannons could destroy a bomber, but the low muzzle velocity required that they could be elevated to obtain the desired range. To achieve this, the entire nose section in front of the cockpit could be tilted upward to permit lobbing the cannon shells at the target. The second novel feature of the XP-54 concerned the method by which the pilot entered and exited the cockpit. With the bottom of the fuselage 6 feet off the ground, entrance to the cockpit could be difficult. An ingenious arrangement utilizing a hinge section below the cockpit dropped downward, lowering the pilot's seat with it. The pilot then simply mounted the seat, rode up into the cockpit. This also simplified the sealing of the cockpit for pressurization. In the event of an emergency bailout, the seat slid rapidly downward as the hinge panel folded backwards, and the pilot was dropped safely below the propeller and stabilizer, virtually a downward ejection seat. The second plane in this series of unusual configurations was the Curtiss XP-55 Ascender. And this one you can see, I believe, in the United States Air Force Museum. And this one the flight tests did indicate several areas requiring improvements, mainly in the vertical keel area, but the Army was satisfied with the potential design, and approval for construction for 3 of them occurred on July 10th, 1942. The Ascender took its first test in 1943. The initial takeoff run was so long that the nose elevator area was increased 15% for subsequent flights. The second test flight, the XP-55 flipped on its back during stall tests, and attempts to recover it failed. The plane stabilized in an inverted state, but the engine quit and it fell vertically 16,000 feet before the pilot decided an inverted landing would ruin his whole day, and safely abandoned the stricken machine. The The XP-55 was not a true canard since it lacked a fixed forward elevator. The entire surface was movable and trailed in normal flight. In effect, it was a flying wing with a forward trimmed surface. Performance was similar to many conventional fighters, having a top speed of 390 miles per hour at 19,000 feet. The swept wing design spanned 44.5 feet, 29 feet long, and was 10 feet high. And this says here in the book, an example of this is in the Smithsonian Institution for display at the National Aerospace Museum. Jack Northrop was all about the flying wings, and the XP-56 bullet was pretty close to that design that he so dreamt about, making sure it got off the flying board or the board and was made by the United States, or was put in the United States Air Force. The first P-56 was completed in April 1943, and taxi tests were begun to determine the characteristics of the radical design. Initially, trouble with the brakes caused the fighter to yaw dangerously during high-speed taxi runs. New brakes were devised and installed before testing could proceed. Additional difficulties were encountered with the engine. Finally, September 30th, 1943, the Black Bullet, as it was called, finally left the ground. The first flight made an average altitude of 5 feet, as the pilot gingerly tried the controls. In following flights, the altitude was gradually increased before the full performance of the XP-56 could be studied. The first machine suffered nose wheel shimmy during a high-speed run. Collapse of the gear strut caused the blunt nose to dig into the ground, and the stubby fighter tumbled on its back. March 23, 1944, a highly modified version was flown. This flight lasted some 7 minutes, however, due to excessive nose heaviness. On later flights, this undesirable characteristic vanished when the gear was retracted. Variations of the second aircraft included an increase in vertical fin area and redesigned wing tips with a novel Venturi-like rudders consisting of tube-mounted valves which caused differential drag to create yaw. Flight testing of the XP-56 proved disappointing, and in view of the success of conventional fighters, the need for information of such radical configuration was no longer important, and the entire program was abolished. So, just some specs on this thing. The Northrop plane had a wingspan of 42.5 feet. The length was 27.5 feet, had a height of 11 feet. It doesn't really say in the books what its top speed was. I think it was just too pitchy in order to really test that. You can see it at the Smithsonian Institution if you wish to go view the plane. This again is another Anigrand model. It comes with the larger kits, and I built this in 2010 along with the XP-54 and the XP-55. If you know your car history, then you undoubtedly have heard of Preston Tucker. In fact, there was a movie made by Francis Ford Coppola about the Tucker. Well, Tucker also designed an aircraft, and this is the Tucker XP-57. This was scratch built by myself. It had a wingspan of 28 feet 5 inches, a length of 26 feet 7 inches, and a wing area of 120 square feet. Just stood over 8 foot high. Proposed performance showed it was supposed to reach a maximum speed of 308 miles per hour. This never got off the drawing board. Before much more than paperwork was done, the Tucker Company found itself unable to proceed with construction due to financial problems, and the XP-57 contract was expired. How I came up with the design was the book that I have been reading from during this video by Lloyd Jones, and there are the 3 view pictures that I scaled down to create the aircraft. So here we have pictured the Lockheed XP-58 Chain Lightning. This is another Anigrand kit, fantastically designed resin model. When an aircraft design proves successful, it's only natural that it becomes the basis of continual development. In some instances, this can lead to superior performance and vastly improved aircraft. In other cases, the result does not merit the effort put forth, and the end product soon vanishes into obscurity. Such was the case with the Lockheed XP-58 Chain Lightning. Had a maximum speed of 436 miles per hour, had a huge wingspan of 70 feet. The length was 49.5 feet and stood 16 feet high. Now, of course, those of us that are plane aficionados, we recognize this as what looks like the P-38. So let's do a side-by-side comparison here. So here we go. P-38's on the right, the XP-58's on the left. Just a huge, huge plane. So three incarnations of that. We had the P-38, and then the XP-49, which I pictured in the last video, and now the XP-58. The second XP-58 was canceled when 65% complete. The first machine was flown to Wright Field on October 22nd, 1944, where maintenance problems led to its abandonment, and it was subsequently retired to ground instruction duties. The last plane in this video is the Bell P-59. This was America's first jet. It was called the Aerocomet. It will sit on its front legs, but I think the vibrations cause it to tilt down. This is a kit that I constructed completely from pine in 1998, and was really kind of the one that got me going to complete this whole series of 1/44 scale aircraft. The kit was not available at the time any other way. Now it's available by Anigrand as part of their mystery kits. It was really unfortunate that the P-59 suffered from early engine jet problems, because it could have been a turning point for the United States, and as far as fighters go, and it would have been really awesome if we had been able to see a jet-to-jet fighter fight occur during World War II. That did not happen until the Korean War. It had a maximum speed of 413 miles per hour, so the P-51 was a good 50 to 75 miles per hour faster than it, and it was just a regular propeller-driven aircraft. It had a wingspan of 45.5 feet, a length of 38 feet 10 inches, and a height of 12 feet. So the Aerocomet, this is kind of what started things off for the United States, and the next jet plane that we would see successfully installed would be the Lockheed P-80, but we would not see that until the end of World War II, 1945. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a couple videos from now. Well, if you like this video, please click the like button, and we'll see you at the next one.